Marketing Your Private Practice is a podcast where you'll learn easy to implement tips and strategies to grow your business without spending all day online. I'm your host, Colaiacovo, and I teach practitioners the Thrive marketing method to create simple and streamlined plans by focusing on long-term strategies, not just social media. Discover ways to spend less time on your marketing, attract more clients, and build the financial freedom that comes with a thriving practice. One where you have time left in your day for the people and things that matter to you. Hey, private practice heroes. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm your host, Colaiacovo, and today we are continuing with the Client Consult Tracker series. This is the episode where you're going to learn what all of those numbers in that tracker are telling you about your marketing. We're going to look at what the data and the patterns actually mean and what you can do with that information to change your marketing. Now, in the last two episodes, I shared why tracking this data outside your electronic health record and your booking systems is so critical and what to record in a tracker after every consult call. In the last episode, we walked through all 12 data points in the tracker that I use with my clients. And by the way, you can download a copy of that for yourself that's free as well. And there'll be a link to that in the show notes, wherever you're listening in here. This episode is all about looking at that data and what it's telling you about your marketing. So where are things working? Where might they not be working? And where to focus your time and energy. And in the next episode, we're going to take it even further and talk about what that data will tell you about your private practice or your business itself. This is a two-part lesson on all of that data that you've been tracking and what you can do with it. So a quick catch-up for anyone who is new listening in. The Client Consult Tracker that I'm referring to is a free spreadsheet that gives you one place to record a bunch of numbers and data points from every consult call that you do with prospective clients. You're going to record things like where the person came from, what they said when they reached out, how they reached out, whether they signed on or not, how long they stayed, all sorts of stuff like that. Episode 180 tells you all about the numbers to track. It's really just having one place so that you can see the real story, the big picture of what's going on in your practice, because it's usually not what you think is happening. This information tells you what is actually happening from those real live numbers. And you can grab a copy of that free tracker at marketingyourprivatepractice.com/181. And like I said, there'll be a link to that in the show notes wherever you're listening in on the podcast today. So let's dive into what this data you've been tracking is going to tell you about your marketing. The first part that we look at is data point 1, which was the date of contact. And this seems like a simple one, but don't skip it, because just by tracking the date of every consult, you can see, number one, how many consults you're doing every month and whether it's growing or not. And it's a direct measure of whether or not your marketing is working. It can also show you things like seasonal trends, which sometimes surprise people. A lot of people think they have a slow season, but sometimes when they look at the actual numbers, it tells a completely different story. And you can't see a pattern like this just by looking at how many consults may have been booked in your electronic health record. You want to group them together so you can read the information and see the pattern and see what it's trying to tell you. It'll let you know if numbers are flat, if they're dropping, if they're growing, and that's something that's going to tell you if your marketing needs to change something as well. So date of contact, very simple thing to look at. Always record it and count up and track how many you had this month and compare it to the last month and the previous month, the previous year. The next thing you want to look at is data point 5, which is the contact method. This tells you where your marketing is actually working and where people are when they reach out to you. And it's a very underrated data point. People don't think how important this is. The answers that you see in this section tells you where someone was before they found you and reached out and took action. And that's going to tell you what parts of your online presence are important as part of your marketing. So here's an example. If someone booked through your online calendar and the only place that link exists is on your contact page, then they had to have been on your website. They weren't on Instagram. They weren't on a directory. Your website brought them in as that final point of contact. The reason this one is critical to check is that so many practice owners assume that social media is driving their consults. And maybe it is, but unless people are literally messaging you there and reaching out and specifically contacting you through social media, it's possible another part of your online presence is playing a part. And in this case, people are going to your website. So when you look at that contact method column and you see that almost everybody at some point was landing on your website, that is a marketing signal. It tells you where you need to focus time and energy when it comes to your marketing. And it may not be about posting more and more content on social media, but making sure that your website is able to help people when they land there know exactly how to reach out to you. So data point 5 is your contact method, and that's going to tell you where your marketing is actually working and where you need to make sure you're focusing your marketing as well. Because if you haven't looked at your website in a year and you don't know what happens when somebody comes on your website, but yet lots of people are there, imagine what would happen if you improved what you have on there so that as people land, you convert more of them to book those calls with you. That's how this kind of information you track can help you out. Now, data point 6 and 7 were all about referral source data and who referred them or where did they get that? Where did that referral come from? And this is one that often surprises people almost every time we review this information. I will almost always get very similar answers from people. They typically tell me that a lot of people will come from their social media. Some of them might say that everybody that they're getting is coming in from referrals, or they're coming from Psychology Today or Health Profs, different places like this. But then when we go looking at the actual data, it's almost always never what they thought it was, and it's something different. And the reason is because without looking at the actual numbers, basing it on a thought or a feeling, or because maybe people mentioned they saw you here or you thought it came from there, but when you actually tally up the numbers, they can say something very different. And when you look at this and you see a gap between where you think your clients are coming from and where they're actually coming from, the gap is often the reason your marketing isn't seeming like it's working for you. You might have been putting all of your energy somewhere that isn't the source of where these clients come from. So count up that referral source column and really look at those entries. And what you're looking for is where the actual numbers land. Again, these will tell you a lot more than what you remember or you think is happening. If your top referral sources are not where you've been focusing your marketing time, that could be your signal to shift where you're focusing that marketing. This number will tell you where to put your energy and where to spend more time on marketing activities that are going to help you grow your business or your practice. So if one specific person or place keeps showing up as a referral, maybe it's a particular doctor's office or a therapist or a colleague, that's a marketing activity worth investing in intentionally. And by the way, marketing activities do not all have to be posting on social media. They do not all have to be even blogging or sending newsletters. A nice thank you email or a thank you card to those doctors or therapists, those are marketing activities too. And sometimes they can actually get you a lot farther than all the reels in the world that you'll try recording and posting online. Sometimes a quick check-in and having a coffee could be something that will help you a lot more, especially if the top referral sources you have are actual people that you know, or even sometimes people you don't know, which one of the first things that I tell my clients is when they get a referral from somebody they don't know, they definitely need to investigate that, reach out to them, thank them, talk to them, maybe book a coffee and find out more if you can. And when you spend your time like this, a lot of folks just don't see it as marketing, but it truly is. I call it networking marketing because you're typically talking to people and you're being intentional about those contacts with places or people that are referring clients to you. And you do that because the data told you that relationship, that connection is driving your marketing results. And sometimes you might find that a source is sending all sorts of people to you, but they're not a fit. Maybe the people aren't ready or it's not the right service they're looking for. They're looking for a specialty you don't have. Well, that's a marketing signal too, because it might mean that your messaging with that referral partner could use a conversation or a tweak so that the other person understands a little better who you really work with and how you help them. So when you look at these different data points, that's one that is going to help you understand, do you need to do a little more offline networking more often than anything else here, and making sure that you're connecting with those specific places, the doctors, the clinics, the people that are referring to you, but also the non real life people as well. If you, in fact, are getting a lot of traffic from health profs or from Psychology Today or from different places like that, have you looked at your profile recently? Because if you know that you're getting a lot of traffic from there and that people say, oh, I heard about you on Psychology Today or health profs or wherever it might be, if it's some other online directory, you need to make sure that whatever profile and listing you have there is current and up to date. And if the people that come to you from those places turn out to be not a sale, that's often your hint and your tip that you need to look at those profiles and update them, because maybe they were coming to you for diabetes management all the time when you're not that kind of a dietitian, but your profile had that old information. So this data point 6 and 7, looking at the referral source and where those referral sources are coming from, is a key point in you understanding what's working and not, and how people are getting to you and booking those initial consults. Now, the next data point is the one that you've heard me talk about before, the words that they say. So this is a section that I have in the tracker. It's data point 8 in there. And this is where you record down what words people say about why they came to see you, how they sought you out in the first place, and what their problems are. And this one is my absolute favorite for helping clients nail their marketing message with the words that truly hit home with potential clients. The words they say column in your tracker is one of the most valuable marketing research tools you have access to. And it's sitting there. The information is right there on every consult that you're doing, but most people ignore that. Now that you know that you should be tracking it, when you look at these words and when you start hearing them and you look back at those words and you can see those trends, it's one of those things that helps you then look at what you're doing with your marketing and put those words into your marketing content. Most people, though, just hear them and have a consult and never pay attention to them. So that language just disappears. But if you're recording it and then you're paying attention to it and tracking it, and you start to see the same phrases showing up again and again, it's not just an interesting coincidence. That is your potential clients all telling you what kind of words and content to use in your marketing content. And that's how good marketing copy works. Not because it sounds polished, but because it sounds like the person reading it, and it hits home with them because they feel that exact same way. I've had so many people come to me and say, I read that article, I heard you talking on your podcast and you said this, and I was like, that's exactly how I feel. That's what this data can do and help you with. That is a column you always want to be looking at, especially just right now. Even if you take some time, look at the last 5 to 10 entries. If you've been tracking for a while, look at them all. Can you find a phrase that appears in there more than twice, more than 3 times, more than 4 times? If you are seeing something common like that, that phrase, those words belong in your marketing. Maybe it's your next best headline on your website. You never know. This is a case where sometimes your clients are helping you develop the marketing and writing your marketing for you. You just have to be paying attention and use it. Now, I do have an entire episode on this marketing strategy. It's number 66 on the podcast, and I will put a link to it in the show notes so you can go a little deeper on how to use this as a regular part of your marketing planning and your content. The next data point we want to look at when it comes to how you can use this information to ramp up your marketing is your conversion rate. And this is a direct measure of how well your marketing is working or not. This is where you're looking at, did someone sign up? Yes or no, and then why or why not? And looking at how many consult calls you have and how many people sign up. You do that quick math, divide the number of people who became clients in a certain time period divided by the number of consults you had in that same time period, and you have your conversion rate. 6 clients from 10 consults is 60%, which is a pretty decent conversion rate, by the way. Somewhere between 50 and 70 is usually a pretty good rate for someone with a service-based business, which a lot of practitioners have. I mentioned in the previous episode that I had a client who was looking to stop her free discovery calls because they felt like a lot of effort when she had a couple people book directly and pay for that initial service and they didn't have a free consult. And she thought, well, that's a way better use of my time because I don't have to spend 20, 30 minutes doing a free call. But when we looked at that data, she had a 90% conversion rate. Basically, if she got anybody on the phone, 9 out of 10 of them were going to sign up as a client. She definitely, and good decision, kept those calls because she could see exactly what she would have been giving up in revenue and practice growth if she stopped them. Now, if your conversion rate is low, the first thing you want to do is look at your marketing because a low conversion rate often starts before the call even happens. If the wrong people keep showing up because they're not a fit for services or they're looking for something you don't offer, that is a marketing and a messaging issue that you're having. Something in your marketing content, on your website, on your listings is attracting the wrong audience. The fix is often in your marketing, not on the call. That's if your data tells you that people are not a fit for your services. So if you have a low conversion rate because 9 out of 10 people you're writing down in your tracking, not a fit, they had a different insurance, they're looking for a different specialty, you need to change something before they get to where they book that call. That's where your fix is, and that's how you fix your marketing, by looking at those conversion rates. And then you always want to look at the why not. Why didn't they sign up? That is a lot of marketing research and an assessment of your own marketing sitting right there in the tracker. Look through it on a regular basis because if the same reason keeps coming up, that's a pattern that your marketing is probably going to need to address. And then I do just want to add here that you want to make sure that those columns that I put in there on the follow-up area, the last columns in the tracker, which if you're using your own tracking system is basically making a point if someone was saying no right now. So not that they're not a fit, but someone's like, no, not right now. I'll try it on my own, whatever. Those people you should be marking in your tracker to follow up with. Following up with people who said not yet is actually a marketing activity too. And it's not about being pushy. It's a good business sales practice because some of those I'm not ready yet people do come back later on, but they may only come back if you reach out. That's why you want to do some follow up with them as well. Those are the data points that I wanted to talk about that will help you with your marketing. And just to give you an idea of some of the ways that you can take a little bit of action this week using your tracker and the data to guide your marketing, I'm going to give a couple action steps to do here today. First thing I want you to do is look at your volume trend for the number of consults that you've been booking. Look at that date of contact column. Look at it month by month for the last 3 or 6 months. Now, again, if you just started, you might not have enough information to go back on and look, is the consult number growing? Is it flat? Is it dropping? If it's not growing, your marketing needs some attention. That is your number one signal of whether or not what you're doing is working, because you always want to see people coming in, at least on a consistent basis, if not a growing basis. Often, if you're not making calls to action in your marketing, if you're not telling people that you're available, if you're not saying, hey, you can book a free call with me, talk to me if you need some help, you've got to make sure that you're putting that offer out there. Watching and seeing what your trend is on the number of consults that you're having will tell you that. And then the second thing I want you to look at is to find out where your marketing is actually landing. This is where you want to tally up your contact method and the referral source columns. Where are people coming from? How are they reaching out to you? Compare that to where you've been spending your marketing time. And if there's a gap, you're going to need to shift your focus. You want to make sure you're putting energy where the data says people are actually finding you versus just to a random place where people may not actually be getting any connection with you. And what I mean by that comes most often with the story that I remember one person came to me for an assessment with their marketing. We did a roadmap session and they told me they were explaining all of their marketing that they had been doing. They had been doing a bunch of reels on Instagram, ton of reels, a ton. I mean, one every day. They had done a challenge, I believe, with some other coach that they'd been working with. And they literally were spending every day making these reels, which, some people can do them in the snap of a hand. But for some of us, it can take a good 15, 20, 30 minutes if you're editing and adding stuff on, which this person was. And they kept doing it because they'd been given this advice of get on there, just keep putting out content. As you keep putting it out, when it starts to, get reaction and you start growing, then you'll know it's working. But when we did our assessment, they could see very clearly that nobody was coming from their social media and everybody was coming in through insurance panels and from referrals from a couple different places. But they'd been ignoring their path of the website and how to book a free call and spending all of their energy on these reels on Instagram. When she made that shift and started focusing on and making sure that the path on their website was very clear, so that people could land on the homepage. They knew to look at her about page, check her out a little bit, services page, contact, and then they booked a call. So we made sure all the messaging on those main pages, which basically are your core pages, home, about, services, and contact. And I did an episode on that, and I will put a link to that in the show notes. I can't recall off the top of my head what number it was. But when we made those changes, she started seeing more people booking with her. And it was because where she really needed to spend her time was making sure that where people already were was set up so that they would book more calls. And to be honest, one of the best things she loved about that was not having to spend all that time making all those videos every single day. You need to look at where your marketing is landing and check that out and compare it to where you're spending your time. That's often the path to saving time with marketing. The third thing that you want to do is make sure you start looking at the words people say from that column where you're tracking the words they say and putting some of that into your marketing content. Take a look at the last 10 to 15 consults that you had and find any phrase that shows up in there more often, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Maybe that's something you need to write a blog about. Maybe it's something that you need to get onto your website copy and in your messaging. That could be your next best piece of marketing content. And it's coming straight from your clients, your potential clients. So as you keep building the data in your tracker and paying attention to it, and after every consult, filling it out, you want to expand to start reviewing it on a regular basis. I like to look at it every month. You want to look at these numbers, look at what they're telling you about your marketing, and then adjust what you're doing based on what you're seeing. And that is how you stop guessing at what you're doing with your marketing and you start making real marketing decisions based on what's actually happening. Now, in the next episode, we're going to go a little bit deeper into what your consult data that you've been tracking is telling you about your private practice itself. You can gain a lot of information about your services, your team if you have one, your capacity, your true ideal client. All of that information we can tell from this same information we've been tracking in this client consult tracker. And it will be just as eye-opening as today. I promise. So that is all I have for you today. I hope you take the time, download that free tracker, start using it, start looking at that data and seeing what kind of messaging it is telling you. And if you're stuck with it, you know that I offer free marketing reviews as part of the podcast here. You're very welcome to sign up with me for a 30-minute review, and we can take a look at some of your data. We can look at a couple of those points, and I'll give you some tips on what that is telling you if you're not sure and if you can't see the trends and the information it's saying. I don't think I've ever run into anybody that we couldn't find some messages and some stories that all of their data was telling us either. If you want to sign up for one of those, you can do that at pepperitmarketing.com/review, and I'll put a link to that wherever you're listening in today as well. And that's it from me. This is Kathy Colaiacovo signing off. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And remember, to thrive in practice and business means letting your real numbers help you make decisions. Your consult data is already telling you what to do next. You just have to track it and then listen to it. I'll see you next time. You can find all of our show notes and resources mentioned at marketingyourprivatepractice.com. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram at pepperitmarketing and say hi. I'd love to hear any feedback you have, and make sure to rate and review the podcast and hit subscribe on your favorite player so you don't miss any future episodes.